I don't know much about Horace Walpole, to be fair. It's probably the one I know the less.
He wrote a lot of essays, and The Castle of Otranto is the sort of first recognised Gothic story, and it's got the fatal prophecy and the phantom haunting the castle. It's got the atmosphere, the location, filled with, great big statues and weird things happening.
Horace Walpole, 1717 to 1797, was born Horatio Walpole, youngest son of the first British Prime Minister Sir Robert Walpole. He was a writer, art historian, antiquarian, man of letters, and politician. As a teenager, he went on a grand tour of Europe, visiting mainly France and Italy. He is chiefly remembered for writing the earliest Gothic novel, The Castle of Otranto, which he published in 1764, and for building Strawberry Hill House in Twickenham.
Interesting that he had this nightmare that set it off, and there's this letter that he wrote to the Cambridge Antiquary, because Horace Walpole was a great collector as well, but he collected especially Gothic memorabilia.
Walpole's art collection, one of the most important ones in the country, was auctioned off in 1842. The sale lasted 24 days and became quite a society event, with river trips, especially organised, down the Thames to transport visitors and buyers to Strawberry Hill House. There was even a temporary building set up in the grounds of the house for the sale itself.
Got hold of, I don't know, do you know Dr. Robert Dee? He was a physician and astronomer to Queen Elizabeth I.
Yes, he was sometimes called as a sorcerer in a way.
And there's old prints of him summoning the dead, apparently. And he had this obsidian stone that he used for scrying with, looking into it like a kind of crystal ball, or possibly for talking with the dead, who knows. So Horace Walpole tracked it down, and he bought it wherever he found it. He bought it, and it's in his collection.
Wow.
So he would collect all kinds of things, not just historical, but with some significance that could be magical, Gothic, supernatural, all of this kind of thing. So he's surrounding himself with a lot of these things. He builds himself this brilliant palace, the Strawberry Hill Gothic mansion.
Walpole worked with designers and architects to create his country home, Strawberry Hill House, which was built between 1749 and 1790. Strawberry Hill is a prime example of early Gothic revival, drawing on original medieval architecture, such as Old St. Paul's Cathedral. Walpole created a building large enough to house his collection of paintings, ceramics, and antiques. His collection included items of the occult, such as a black obsidian scrying stone, which he claimed had belonged to Dr. John Dee, the Elizabethan alchemist.
Never holds any balls in the mansion. It's beautifully laid out, but he only has a few select guests to dinners. And he actually says in one letter to one of his friends, no, we won't have any balls here. No, I couldn't cope with that, no. So he's basically living this life of, again, a sort of invisible prince. He's in this castle. Very few people actually visit him. And then he wakes up and he writes to his friend the Cambridge Antiquary. Shall I even confess to you what was the origin of this romance? I waked one morning in the beginning of last June from a dream of which all I could recover was that I had thought myself
in an ancient castle. A very natural dream for a head filled like mine with Gothic story, and that on the uppermost banister of a great staircase I saw a gigantic hand in armour. In the evening I sat down and began to write, without knowing in the least what I was intended to say or relate. The word grew on my hands, and I grew fond of it. Add that I was very glad to think of anything rather than politics. In short, I was so engrossed with my tale, which I completed in less than 2 months, that one evening I wrote from the time I had to drink my tea, about 6 o'clock, till half an hour after 1 in the morning, when my hands and finger were so weary I could not hold the pen to finish the sentence. but left Matilda and Isabella talking in the middle of a paragraph. You will laugh at my earnestness, but if I have amused you by retracing with any fidelity the manners of ancient days, I am content, and give you leave to think me as idle as you please.
So that all, I mean, it's hardly surprising he did give himself a nightmare, but it's kind of interesting. So that gave him, that seed was for the castle of Otranto.
Wow.
The original title was The Castle of Otranto, a story, translated by William Marshall, gentleman, from the original Italian of Onufrio Muralto, canon of the Church of St. Nicholas at Otranto. Walpole had set up his own printing press, the Strawberry Hill Press, and the first edition of the novel was printed there. The poet Thomas Gray told Walpole that the novel made some of us cry a little, and all in general afraid to go to bed o' nights. The novel remained a staple of Gothic literature, inspiring later authors such as Anne Radcliffe, Mary Shelley, Bram Stoker, Edgar Allan Poe, and Robert Louis Stevenson.
Yeah, it's a shame we don't have more details, but I guess he sort of, we see it in the story, I imagine, he's worked it in.
He already has actually the material in his head when it appears, because he said, like, the work grew on my hands and I grew fond of it.
Yeah.
I was so engrossed with my tales, so basically I think he was obsessed. I think
yeah, it's like,
it sounds like an obsession though.
It does, doesn't it? It's right. It's really vivid, and he's getting it down while it's fresh in his mind, I guess, isn't it?
And he continued for 2 months. I would have stopped after probably 1 or 2 weeks.
Yes. Yeah, I think he wrote it pretty fast. And that's another thing, when, I don't know if it's all of them, but you often have this when it's something as fresh as that. I mean, look, Robert Louis Stevenson, he wrote out Jekyll and Hyde, like, pretty much as soon as he got